Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my other socials for more. Enjoy. I can't believe we're actually here, Emily gushed. It feels like forever since we've been to the state fair. Rachel smiled, her heart swelling with affection. Well, we did just get back from our honeymoon. I'd say that's a pretty good excuse. The newlyweds had tied the knot just 3 weeks prior, followed by a blissful escape to a tropical paradise. Now they were easing back into reality, but not quite ready to let go of the vacation spirit. The state fair seemed like the perfect transition, a last hurrah before diving back into their routines. Oh, look, Emily pointed towards a colorful tent. They've got those mini donuts you love. Should we start there? Rachel's eyes lit up. You know me too well. Lead the way, Mrs. Johnson-Chennett. They weaved through the crowd, the scent of cinnamon and sugar growing stronger. As they waited in line, Rachel couldn't help but steal glances at her wife. Emily's chestnut hair was pulled back in a messy bun, tendrils escaping to frame her face. She wore a flowing sundress patterned with sunflowers, a stark contrast to Rachel's own jeans and navy polo. 2 bags of mini donuts, please, Emily ordered when they reached the front. She handed one to Rachel, who immediately popped a warm, sugar-coated morsel into her mouth. Rachel hummed, closing her eyes in bliss. These are even better than I remember. They continued their exploration, munching on donuts and taking in the sights and sounds of the fair. Children shrieked with delight on nearby rides, while barkers called out to passers-by, enticing them to try their luck at various games. Want to check out the animal barns? Rachel suggested, licking sugar from her fingers. Emily nodded enthusiastically. Absolutely! I can't wait to see the baby piglets! They made their way to the livestock area, the scent of hay and animals growing stronger. Inside the first barn, they found rows of stalls housing massive dairy cows. Emily approached one, reaching out to pet its velvety nose. Hey there, beautiful, she cooed. The cow blinked lazily, seeming to enjoy the attention. Rachel watched her wife with a mix of amusement and adoration. Emily had always been the more outgoing of the two, quick to connect with both people and animals. It was one of the many things Rachel loved about her. As they moved on to the next barn, Rachel felt a familiar twinge of anxiety. She'd been fortunate that their honeymoon had been largely free of awkward moments or unkind stares, but being back in their home state brought old insecurities bubbling to the surface. Emily, ever attuned to her wife's moods, squeezed her hand. You okay, love? Rachel forced a smile. Yeah, just a little overwhelmed by the crowds, I guess. Emily's expression softened with understanding. She knew that Rachel, as a transgender woman, sometimes struggled in public spaces. We can take a break if you need to. Maybe find a quiet spot to sit for a bit. Rachel shook her head. No, I'm okay. I want to see those piglets you were so excited about. They entered the swine barn, immediately greeted by the sight of a sow nursing a litter of tiny pink piglets. Emily let out a delighted squeal that rivaled the piglets themselves. Oh my gosh, Rachel, look at them! They're so tiny and perfect! Rachel couldn't help but laugh at her wife's enthusiasm. They are pretty cute, she admitted, leaning in for a closer look. As they stood there, admiring the animals, Rachel overheard a conversation nearby. Mommy, why are those 2 ladies holding hands? A small voice asked. Because they love each other, sweetie, came the matter-of-fact reply, just like Mommy and Daddy do. Rachel felt a wave of warmth wash over her. It was moments like these that reminded her how far society had come, even if there was still progress to be made. Emily tugged on her hand. Come on, I smell something delicious. Let's go investigate. They emerged from the barn into the late afternoon sun. The fairgrounds were even more crowded now, with families and couples milling about, enjoying the various attractions. Emily led them towards a food stand adorned with a giant chocolate chip cookie. Sweet Marthas, Emily exclaimed. We can't leave without trying these. They joined the line, which moved surprisingly quickly. Soon they were each holding a paper cone overflowing with warm, gooey cookies. "These are dangerous," Rachel mumbled around a mouthful of chocolate chip perfection. "I could eat about 1,000,000 of these." Emily laughed, reaching out to brush a crumb from the corner of Rachel's mouth. "Good thing we're walking it all off, right?" As they continued their stroll, the sky began to darken ominously. A cool breeze picked up, causing goosebumps to rise on Emily's bare arms. "Looks like it might rain," Rachel observed, glancing up at the gathering clouds. "Should we head for cover?" Before Emily could respond, fat raindrops began to fall. Within seconds, it had turned into a full-fledged downpour. Squealing and laughing, they ran towards the nearest building, joining a crowd of other fairgoers seeking shelter. They found themselves in a large exhibition hall filled with vendor booths. Shaking water from their hair, they decided to make the best of the situation and explore. "Oh, check this out," Emily said, picking up a strange-looking kitchen gadget. "It's supposed to spiralize vegetables. Wouldn't that be fun for salads?" Rachel raised an eyebrow. "Sure, if you want to spend an hour prepping a single zucchini." Emily playfully swatted her arm. "Don't be such a pessimist. I'm buying it. We can have spiral veggie night once a week." As Emily made her purchase, Rachel wandered over to a nearby booth selling handmade jewelry. She admired a delicate silver bracelet, wondering if it might make a nice gift for her mother-in-law. "Can I help you find something?" the vendor asked with a friendly smile. Rachel was about to reply when a gruff voice behind her cut in. "You shouldn't be in here!" She turned to find an older man glaring at her, his face twisted in disgust. Rachel felt her stomach drop, immediately understanding the implication behind his words. Before she could formulate a response, Emily was at her side, arm wrapped protectively around her waist. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, her voice steely. The man looked between them, seeming to deflate slightly under Emily's fierce gaze. He muttered something unintelligible and shuffled away. Rachel let out a shaky breath. "Thanks," she whispered to her wife. Emily pressed a kiss to her temple. "Always. That guy was a jerk. Don't let him ruin our day, okay?" Rachel nodded, forcing herself to shake off the encounter. She knew Emily was right. They couldn't let one person's ignorance overshadow all the joy they'd experienced. The rain had slowed to a drizzle by the time they emerged from the exhibition hall. The air felt fresher, cleansed by the brief storm. They decided to continue their culinary tour of the fair, stopping to sample cheese curds, corn on the cob, and pronto pups. "I think I'm going to burst," Rachel groaned good-naturedly as they finished sharing a massive turkey leg. Emily laughed, wiping grease from her fingers. "But we haven't even had the deep-fried candy bars yet." As the afternoon wore on, they explored more of the fair's attractions. They cheered on racing pigs, admired intricate sand sculptures, and marveled at the butter sculptures in the dairy building. Rachel even convinced Emily to join her on the giant slide, their shrieks of laughter echoing as they zoomed down side by side. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the fairgrounds, they received a text from Emily's brother, inviting them to meet up near the grandstand. They found him with his wife and their 2 young children, all sporting matching I Love the Fair t-shirts. "Aunt Emily! Aunt Rachel!" the kids cried, running to hug their aunts. Emily scooped up her niece, peppering her face with kisses. "Hey, Munchkin! Are you having fun?" The little girl nodded enthusiastically. "We saw the biggest pig ever, and I got to milk a cow." Rachel high-fived her nephew. "That sounds awesome! What was your favorite part?" "The midway," he exclaimed. "Dad let me ride the tilt-a-whirl 3 times. Emily's brother groaned. "Yeah, and I'm still feeling it. How about you two? Enjoying your first fair as a married couple?" Rachel and Emily exchanged a warm glance. "It's been pretty perfect," Rachel said softly. They chatted for a while, sharing stories of their day and laughing at the children's antics. As they talked, Rachel noticed Emily shivering slightly in her still damp dress. "Hey," Rachel said, shrugging off her lightweight jacket. Why don't you put this on? You look cold." Emily smiled gratefully, slipping her arms into the sleeves. "Thanks, love. Always looking out for me." As the sky darkened and the fairground lights flickered to life, they bid farewell to Emily's family and began making their way towards the exit. The fair had taken on a magical quality in the twilight, with colorful lights twinkling and the distant sound of music floating on the air. "Wait!" Emily said suddenly, tugging Rachel to a stop. "We can't leave without riding the Ferris wheel. It's tradition." Rachel glanced at the towering ride, its lights creating a dazzling display against the night sky. "You're right. Let's do it." They joined the line and soon found themselves being ushered into a swinging car. As they began to ascend, Rachel slipped her arm around Emily's shoulders, pulling her close. "Thank you for today," Rachel said softly. "For everything, really. I don't know what I'd do without you." Emily turned to face her, eyes shining in the dim light. "You never have to find out. I'm not going anywhere." As their car reached the top of the wheel, the fair spread out below them in a tapestry of lights and movement. Rachel leaned in, pressing a gentle kiss to Emily's lips. "I love you," she whispered. Emily smiled, resting her forehead against Rachel's. "I love you too. Always." As the wheel began its descent, bringing them back to Earth, both women felt a sense of contentment wash over them. They had faced challenges and would undoubtedly face more in the future, but in that moment, suspended above the world with the person they loved most, everything felt possible. The Ferris wheel came to a stop and they disembarked, hand in hand. As they made their way towards the exit, the sounds of the fair faded behind them. They walked in comfortable silence, each lost in their own thoughts but acutely aware of the other's presence. When they reached their car, Emily paused, turning to face Rachel. "You know, I was thinking about what that guy said in the exhibition hall." Rachel tensed slightly, not wanting to revisit the unpleasant moment. "Oh?" Emily nodded, her expression serious. "Yeah, and I realized something. He was right. You shouldn't have been in there." Rachel felt her heart drop, confusion and hurt washing over her. But before she could speak, Emily continued, a mischievous glint in her eye. "You shouldn't have been in there because you should have been out here, enjoying the fair with me every second. We shouldn't waste a moment on people like that." Relief and love surged through Rachel. She pulled Emily into a tight embrace, burying her face in her wife's hair. "You're amazing. You know that?" Emily laughed softly, returning the hug. "I have my moments. Now let's go home. I don't know about you, but I'm exhausted." As they drove home, the lights of the fair fading in the rearview mirror, Rachel reflected on the day. It hadn't been perfect. No day ever was. But it had been real, filled with laughter, love, and the occasional challenge. And really, wasn't that what life was all about? She glanced over at Emily, who was humming softly along with the radio, her profile illuminated by the passing streetlights. Rachel felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. Whatever life threw their way, she knew they'd face it together. As they pulled into their driveway, Emily turned to Rachel with a sleepy smile. "So, what do you think? Should we make the state fair an annual tradition?" Rachel grinned, leaning over to press a kiss to her wife's cheek. "Absolutely. But next year, let's skip the spiralizer, okay?" Emily's laughter filled the car, a sound that Rachel knew she'd never tire of hearing. As they made their way inside, arms around each other's waists, Rachel felt a sense of peace settle over her. They were home, in every sense of the word. The next morning, Rachel woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Emily puttering around in the kitchen. She stretched lazily, enjoying the warmth of the sunlight streaming through the window. After a few moments, she dragged herself out of bed and padded downstairs. She found Emily in the kitchen, surrounded by an array of vegetables and the new spiralizer they'd bought at the fair. Rachel couldn't help but laugh at the determined look on her wife's face as she attempted to turn a zucchini into noodles. "I see you wasted no time putting that thing to use," Rachel teased, pouring herself a cup of coffee. Emily looked up, a streak of zucchini on her cheek. I figured we might as well give it a try, but I have to admit it's not as easy as the demonstration made it look. Rachel set down her mug and moved to Emily's side, gently taking the spiralizer from her hands. Here, let me help. 2 heads are better than 1, right? Together, they managed to create a respectable pile of vegetable noodles. As they worked, they chatted about their plans for the day and the upcoming week. It was a simple moment, but one that felt infinitely precious to Rachel. As they sat down to enjoy their unconventional breakfast of spiralized vegetables and scrambled eggs, Emily reached across the table to take Rachel's hand. You know, she said softly, I was thinking about yesterday, about everything we've been through to get here, and I just want you to know how proud I am to be your wife. How proud I am of you for being unapologetically yourself, even when it's hard. Rachel felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. Thank you, she whispered, squeezing Emily's hand. I couldn't do any of this without you. Emily smiled, her eyes shining with unshed tears of her own. Well, lucky for you, you'll never have to. We're in this together, spiral veggies and all. As they finished their breakfast and began cleaning up, Rachel felt a sense of contentment wash over her. Life wasn't always easy, and there would always be challenges to face. But with Emily by her side, she felt ready to take on whatever came their way. The rest of the day passed in a comfortable blur of domestic tasks and lazy moments. They unpacked the last of their honeymoon luggage, did a load of laundry, and spent some time planning their upcoming week. In the afternoon, they curled up on the couch to watch a movie, Rachel's head resting on Emily's lap as Emily absently ran her fingers through her wife's hair. As the credits rolled, Emily glanced down at Rachel. Hey, I was thinking, remember how we talked about maybe getting a pet? Rachel sat up, intrigued. Yeah, what about it? Well, I saw an ad for a local animal shelter. They're having an adoption event next weekend. I thought maybe we could go just to look. Rachel felt a spark of excitement. They'd discussed getting a pet before the wedding, but had decided to wait until after the honeymoon. Now it felt like the perfect next step in building their life together. I'd love that, Rachel said, leaning in to kiss Emily softly. Who knows? Maybe we'll find the perfect furry addition to our family. As the day wound down and they prepared for bed, Rachel found herself filled with a sense of anticipation for the future. Their honeymoon had been wonderful, a perfect escape from reality. But this, the everyday moments, the small decisions, the shared dreams, this was what she had always wanted. She climbed into bed beside Emily, who was already half asleep, her book forgotten on her chest. Rachel gently removed the book, placing it on the nightstand before turning off the light. In the darkness, she snuggled close to her wife, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo. Good night, my love, she whispered, pressing a soft kiss to Emily's shoulder. Emily mumbled something incoherent, instinctively curling closer to Rachel. As sleep began to claim her, Rachel's last conscious thought was one of profound gratitude. For Emily, for their life together, and for all the adventures yet to come. The week flew by in a whirlwind of work and routine, but the anticipation of the upcoming animal shelter event kept both Rachel and Emily buzzing with excitement. They spent their evenings researching pet care, debating the merits of dogs versus cats, and playfully arguing over potential pet names. When Saturday finally arrived, they woke early, both too excited to sleep in. They shared a quick breakfast of toast and coffee before heading out, the morning air crisp and invigorating. The animal shelter was bustling with activity when they arrived. Volunteers in bright t-shirts led potential adopters around, introducing them to the animals. The air was filled with a cacophony of barks, meows, and excited chatter. Emily squeezed Rachel's hand as they entered. Ready to meet our potential new family member? Rachel nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. Let's do this. They started in the cat room, cooing over kittens and admiring the older cats lounging regally in their enclosures. Emily fell in love with a fluffy orange tabby, while Rachel was drawn to a sleek black cat with striking green eyes. "They're all so beautiful," Emily sighed as they moved on to the dog area. "How are we ever going to choose?" Rachel was about to respond when she felt a tug on her pant leg. She looked down to find a small, scruffy terrier mix gazing up at her with soulful brown eyes. The dog's tail began to wag furiously as Rachel crouched down to its level. "Well, hello there," Rachel said softly, offering her hand for the dog to sniff. The terrier immediately began showering her fingers with enthusiastic licks. Emily knelt beside them, laughing as the dog's attention shifted to her, its whole body wiggling with excitement. "Aren't you a friendly little thing?" A volunteer approached, smiling at the scene. "I see you've met Buddy. He's one of our sweetest residents. Would you like to know more about him?" Rachel and Emily exchanged a glance, a silent understanding passing between them. "Yes, please," they said in unison. The volunteer led them to a small play area where they could interact with Buddy more freely. As they tossed a ball and watched the little dog bound after it with unbridled joy, the volunteer filled them in on his background. "Buddy was found wandering the streets about a month ago," she explained. "No chip, no collar. We think he's about 3 years old. He's great with other dogs and absolutely loves people. He's been waiting for the right family to come along." As if understanding he was being discussed, Buddy trotted over and plopped himself down between Rachel and Emily, looking up at them with an expression that seemed to say, "Well, what do you think?" Emily laughed, scratching behind Buddy's ears. "I think someone's trying to tell us something." Rachel nodded, her heart already melting. "I think you're right. What do you say? Should we make it official?" Emily's face lit up. "Absolutely." The adoption process went smoothly, and before they knew it, they were heading home with Buddy securely fastened in the back seat. He seemed to sense that something wonderful had happened, his tail thumping steadily against the seat. As they pulled into their driveway, Emily turned to Rachel, her eyes shining. "We did it. We're officially pet parents." Rachel leaned across the center console to kiss her wife. "Another adventure begins." They spent the rest of the day helping Buddy settle into his new home. They laughed as he explored every nook and cranny of the house, his nose twitching with curiosity. They took him for a walk around the neighborhood, beaming with pride as neighbors stopped to admire their new addition. That night, as they curled up on the couch to watch TV, Buddy nestled between them, his head resting on Rachel's lap. Emily reached over to take Rachel's hand, intertwining their fingers. "Thank you," Emily said softly. Rachel quirked an eyebrow. "For what?" "For this. For everything. For building this life with me." Rachel felt a wave of emotion wash over her. She thought about how far they'd come, about all the obstacles they'd overcome. And now here they were, in their own home, with their own little family. "No," Rachel said, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for loving me, for accepting me, for fighting for us. I couldn't imagine doing this with anyone else." Emily leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to Rachel's lips. Buddy, not wanting to be left out, wriggled up to lick both their faces, causing them to break apart laughing. As they settled back, Buddy repositioning himself across both their laps, Rachel felt a profound sense of peace. This was home. This was family. This was love in its purest, most unconditional form. The days that followed were filled with the joys and challenges of new pet ownership. They quickly fell into a routine of early morning walks, evening play sessions, and lots of cuddles in between. Buddy proved to be the perfect addition to their family, his boundless energy and affection bringing a new dimension of joy to their lives. One evening, about a week after bringing Buddy home, Rachel returned from work to find Emily and Buddy curled up on the couch, both fast asleep. Emily's arm was draped protectively over Buddy, who was snoring softly, his head tucked under Emily's chin. The sight made Rachel's heart swell. She quietly set down her bag and took out her phone, snapping a quick picture of the adorable scene. As she did, Emily stirred, blinking sleepily. "Hey, you're home," Emily mumbled, careful not to disturb Buddy. Rachel moved to sit on the edge of the couch, leaning down to kiss Emily's forehead. "Just got in. Looks like you two had a busy day." Emily yawned, gently scratching Buddy's ears. "We went to the dog park. This little guy made about 12 new friends and wore himself out." Rachel smiled, reaching out to pat Buddy, who opened one eye to look at her before going back to sleep. "Sounds like fun. How about I start dinner while you two finish your nap?" Emily nodded gratefully, already drifting back to sleep. "You're the best." As Rachel moved to the kitchen, she felt a surge of contentment. This was the life she had always dreamed of, but had sometimes feared might be out of reach. A loving partner, a cozy home, even a dog, all the pieces had fallen into place. She began preparing dinner, humming softly to herself. The sound of Buddy's tags jingling announced his arrival in the kitchen, followed closely by a still sleepy Emily. "Need any help?" Emily asked, wrapping her arms around Rachel's waist from behind. Rachel leaned back into the embrace. "Nah, I've got it under control. Why don't you set the table?" They moved around the kitchen in perfect sync, a dance they'd perfected over years of being together. Buddy weaved between their legs, hoping for a stray morsel to fall his way. As they sat down to eat, Rachel couldn't help but reflect on how full her life had become. She thought about the scared, confused person she'd been years ago, struggling to understand her identity and afraid of what the future might hold. "Hey," Emily's voice broke through her thoughts. "Where'd you go just now?" Rachel smiled, reaching across the table to take Emily's hand. "Just thinking about how lucky I am, how far we've come." Emily squeezed her hand. "We've built something pretty amazing, haven't we?" Rachel nodded, her throat tight with emotion. "We really have." Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out my other socials if you want more wonderful content, early access, behind the scenes, and more. All links down below.